You're one of these people who literally made this happen.
We'll figure it out,
Or at least you should rewire your thinking, right? You should start trying with the expectation that it's gonna take time.
I got a little bit militant, actually, and it kind of worked.
When you start sharing and articulate your dreams and your ideas, you start attracting people who have similar dreams and similar ideas.
Grow, rise, open minds, wisdom shines, it never blinds. They are Growthmates.
Hello everyone, welcome to Growthmates. I'm Kate Syuma, and this is a new season, The Creator's Path, where I talk to people who inspired me personally to step on this independent, uncertain, but very, very interesting path where I am today, start creating Growthmates, courses, newsletters, and many, many other things. And today I'm so happy to have this conversation with Reed. Reed, you're one of these people who literally made this happen. Because if you remember a couple of years ago, you introduced me to Maven team. This is how I became a Maven instructor. Then I was looking at what you are doing with Dive.club, and I was like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. And you are one of the most loyal podcasters I have ever seen. And you have created Figma Academy. Now you're creating your product. So you're creating so many things. And I want to talk about all of them, to be honest. But on that note, passing the mic to you so you can better tell who is Reed today.
It's interesting. I remember that conversation so clearly because I ended it, went downstairs, and immediately told my wife. I was like, I just met this person named Kate. It's crazy how parallel our journeys are. Because you had just left, I had just left Maven, and we were both kind of embarking on this, I don't know, there's something out there, we'll figure it out, And we did it almost down to like the month. And so it's been really fun. I've appreciated our relationship, and also thanks for having me on too.
That's wonderful. And I remember I was on your podcast that time as well. Mm-hmm. That moment I was just leaving Mira, trying to understand what I will do next. And what you've been building along these years really inspired my direction. You know that my Growthmates domain is growthmates.club. I was just, wow, why not taking that domain? It's so beautiful. But let's maybe unpack a little bit of who you are and talking about like these creative passions. I also know you're playing piano. I have seen that a while ago. Yeah. And this passion or this intention to start creating, is it coming from, I don't know, childhood, or when exactly you realized like you really want to start creating things by yourself?
I think I was really blessed to grow up with a lot of adults in my life that started their own things. And I didn't realize it until I was maybe in my mid-20s. But then I could kind of look back and be like, my mom started different things. My dad started different things. My grandparents, uncles, aunts, and everybody kind of just blazed their own trail. And I'm sure that shaped my journey in ways that I probably can't even see, but I'm super grateful for. And so most of my career has been as a software designer, but I always have kind of identified as a founder first. And so that was my whole thing out of college, was like, I'm going to start a startup. I don't know exactly what it's going to entail or how to make it work. Spoiler, I didn't figure out how to make it work after like 5 years, but that was just kind of how it was the only way that made sense for me. It was like, of course I'm going to start my own thing. Of course I'm going to create my own job. I didn't have a real job and a real title as a designer until I was like 27, maybe, was the first time. So that's the background. And then it's just, okay, well, what do you want to create? Right. And I think I can see like seasons of life, and it's just whatever I've been interested in at that time. I try to make something there, and for a long time it was education. That's what led to Figma Academy. And it even led to Maven. Like I joined Maven not because I wanted a design role, but because I had this set of ideas that I really, really wanted to bring into the world. I was a little bit too close still to the scar tissue hadn't quite healed from my last failed startups. I was like, I don't want to do this by myself, but I'll find somebody, But that was very much so like how I approached Maven even, it was, hey, I kind of think of myself as a founder. I have this set of design skills. Let me help, you know? So yeah, maybe I'll pause there.
Wow. This, like, I've talked to already 4 people on this show, on this season, and all the similar, things they're mentioning is like this founder mindset. It's like something like is in your DNA. And I would say I'm super different. I'm coming from this traditional, family with traditional values that you need to have like an education, a proper job, safety, because I'm from Russia originally, it's absolutely not about safety.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I was sharing with my dad, like, at some point I would like to do something myself, he was like, no, you don't need that. And it took me a long time, literally almost a decade, to realize like this traditional career path is not the right one for me, or at least I want to try out something else. And I think you've mentioned, or I've seen it somewhere, like you shifted from selling your time to building leverage. And I'm curious, what was the mindset behind that? What was happening in your mind when you really realized that shift?
It's so cliche, but I really actually can tie a lot of that mindset shift back to the famous Naval tweet where he talks about the different ways to build leverage and wealth. And it resonated so deeply. I was like, of course, I don't want to sell my time for money. I want to make a thing. And part of that is financial. Part of that is just, it feels good to have ownership in the thing that you make from scratch too. It's like, that was always really, really attractive to me. And so I very intentionally back in maybe 2019-ish, somewhere around there, made the decision of I'm going to get up every morning and invest into whatever this leverage might become. I didn't exactly know what it was yet. I technically had the domain for Figma Academy, but I had no idea what it was. I knew that I probably needed distribution, and that was the piece that felt the most attainable to me. It's like I wasn't great at coding at that point. I didn't think that I was going to build leverage through code. I didn't necessarily have an idea that I was like, this is my startup. I'm so passionate about it. I'm going to like go for it. But if I ran different simulations of what my career might look like, the universal leverage point that made sense in all those simulations was having audience distribution. And that I felt like I could do. And I had even messed around with it in the past. Like in college, I used to play silly Twitter games where I would try to like grow these different accounts. One was about like NFL parody account. Another one was a music blog. And, I grew, 20, 30,000 followers for this daily music blog. And that was the thing that I was making on the internet when I was 19, 20, something like that. So I figured I'll just start putting myself out there on the internet, see what happens. And I got really diligent about it, almost to a nerdily obsessive state where every single day for 6 months, this was right before COVID, I got up at 5 a.m. and I would get into Figma and I would just make things and tweet about it every single day, having really no idea what I was doing, but I just needed to kind of build that muscle and get momentum behind content creation in general. And so I got a little bit militant actually, and it kind of worked. And through that process, you start to figure out what is interesting, what's resonating. Oh, that worked. Maybe if I try this over here, oh, I'll try this. Oh, that flopped. Okay, I won't do that again, And so you just slowly find the right intersection between what you're interested in and what's resonating with people. And for me, it was getting really, really technical in Figma and getting really deep into like component strategy, slot components, systems, that kind of a thing. And I love thinking about systems. So then I was like, all right, I'm a technical systems designer guy, whatever the heck that meant. And I just kept creating and I just kept making. And at this point, I had enough signal where I could kind of get a sense for what should be in a curriculum. Like, what do people actually want to learn? What's resonating with people? And I basically crowdsourced a curriculum in public by tweeting little mini lessons and things that I was learning every single day. And then eventually I got to the point where I was like, all right, I think there's something here. I'll put little CTAs in the second tweet for Figma Academy. I'll build a wait list. And that was kind of what led to the course.
By the way, if you are new here, besides making this podcast, I also help companies grow meaningful products through Growthmates. My whole career, I've been balancing between user needs and business goals. And the biggest truth I've learned is this: what is good for the user is also good for the business. Over the last 8 years, from Miro to supporting over 25 teams, I've collected a lot of practical frameworks that actually work. And now there are 3 ways I share them. First, my POG advising program. This is where I work closely with your team to build a sustainable, user-centric growth system, not just experiments. Second, the onboarding design sprint. It's a short, focused collaboration to fix activation and redesign the first time experience. Many teams see a real uplift very fast. And third, my course, User Centric Product Led Growth in the AI Era. It's a 3-week intensive where we turn a real challenge into a clear growth roadmap. People from Miro, Dropbox, Atlassian, Loom have already taken it, and for podcast listeners, there is a discount with the code Growthmates. If you want to explore any of these, everything is on growthmates.club, and the link is in the episode description. And if someone on your team might benefit, feel free to share it. And now let's get back to the episode. I remember when you shared with me that story, and 2 years ago, I was in a position when I didn't have my course yet. I had a very small audience on LinkedIn only. I asked you would you recommend me to start Twitter these days? You said it's way more complicated to start it today.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you same question, but today, or even thinking about the next year. Imagining someone who is listening to us really wants to start piloting this and building an audience somewhere. What would be your advice to them? Would you recommend them to choose one platform, just, be fully focused on that? Would you suggest them to, not to try out Twitter, but maybe try out LinkedIn or something else? What is your gut feeling and maybe knowledge now about this?
I think you simultaneously have to work backward from where do you think that your potential audience might be? And then also, what do you get energy from creating? Because there's a person variable, but also a format variable, and you have to find the right combination that works for you. In general, LinkedIn's a lot easier than Twitter right now. Twitter's not easy to crack into. And a lot of the things back in the day, right, you could just write a thread that was good and it would work every single time. I could literally make money every single time I would tweet a thread with a course link. That's a little bit harder to do nowadays. And what I find is, especially within the design tech community, the things that resonate on Twitter are often more visual. What am I making? What's the behind the scenes? It's harder to stand out with ideas on Twitter unless you have kind of this random pop of virality. Whereas with LinkedIn, I think it's so much easier to play there right now. And in general, a lot of the things that worked on Twitter, still work on LinkedIn a year or 2 years later. It's a slightly lagging network in terms of some of the tactics that you could use as a creator. So, and not only that, the click-throughs are way higher on LinkedIn. So I don't even really enjoy it there, but I found myself almost forced to play the game because it's geez, I can get 4x click-throughs, and a lot of content that maybe wouldn't perform on Twitter still performs on LinkedIn. So I would give it a real consideration, even if you don't naturally find yourself spending time there, as long as your audience is there. Now, from the format standpoint, the big line in the sand is probably, well, how much do you gravitate toward video, right? Are you comfortable putting yourself on video? Because the reality is LinkedIn and all social platforms in general just push video right now. There's a real algorithm boost if you had video. It used to be the slideshow carousel PDF kind of things. Those can still hit too, but it's very clear LinkedIn wants to be a content platform that prioritizes video. Now, the worst thing that you can do is pick the format that makes sense, in this case, maybe let's entertain the idea that it might be video, and say, well, I'll just do that because, that's what the algorithm wants. Because if you can't commit to doing something for a very long time, it just doesn't even matter. You'll fail. You have to play a game that you can win through consistency and just showing up and achieve this level of inertia where it just kind of happens and you don't have to feel like you're opening up social media and thinking, oh, what should I post today? If you find yourself in that position, you've already lost, right? Like you're going to burn out. It's going to be exhausting. And I always show people have you seen the "This is Pointless" graph by Jack Butcher? It's this graphic with little dots. Find it. I show it to everybody that, like, if there's one takeaway from someone listening who is interested in creating and building leverage through content and audience, you have to you just Google "This is Pointless" by Jack Butcher. And what it speaks to is the reality that you're going to put a lot of effort in and do a bunch of things and see basically no impact for quite some time. And you have to play a game there where you are understanding that, first off, but then second off, committed to following it through to see yourself to the point where it starts to compound and you start to see the value and the impact. And the reality is it just takes time. So if you're not playing a game that you want to keep playing every single day, even when you're not getting the dopamine feedback, you shouldn't try because it takes time.
Yeah. Or at least you should rewire your thinking, right? You should start trying with the expectation that it's going to take time. And, when we talked 2 years ago about that, sometimes you can hear the person, you can understand that, but you feel, no, it's going to be easier. It's going to be faster. But I'm here today. I'm sharing, like, literally it took me 2 years to build 20K on LinkedIn. And this is how you can calculate how much time it takes. Especially I've been creating a lot of content and highly complex educational content that sometimes took 40 hours to create, let's say, like 10 tear downs of onboarding flows of SaaS products. But I really enjoyed that. And sometimes it's not just necessarily about the number of posts or the total audience. It's about the quality and about the how niche these people are. So I would also suggest to think who you really want to talk to, why, and niche down, like if you can, just to become more unique in your area. But getting back to you, Reed, I really want to talk to you about your journey of building Dive and trying out many things inside this ecosystem. I would call it creator ecosystem because you have done the course, newsletter, podcast. If you look back, maybe you can tell about your pitfalls, about the moments when you felt like I'm gonna give up, but then suddenly you decided to continue and you learned something from these difficult, tricky moments being a creator.
The moments of giving up were quite front loaded, actually. And the reason is, I don't know even how much you know about this, but Dive started off as a school. The intent was not to start a podcast. That was not what I was doing at all. I was building a new type of design school on Maven because I was obsessed with this idea that there just wasn't high quality learning resources for professional designers who were like 5 or more years into their career. Where I was like, I literally want to pay to learn from these incredible people on these different topics, but I just wasn't happy with what I had to choose from. Everything felt like it was boot camps and designed for very early career people. So I was like, we're going to build an advanced school. That was kind of what Figma Academy was. I made it very clear from the beginning. It's advanced, advanced, advanced. That was the key word. And I was like, I think you could just apply this to almost every little slice of the practice of design. And so I recruited 8 people that people probably are quite familiar with. And that was the whole thing. Dive is a school, right? Pick your courses. We're going to launch this suite of courses, and everyone kind of functions as this larger entity. And I was going to try to figure out how to sell courses. And I was already thinking about these types of things through Maven, through Figma Academy. So it just felt really connected with what I had at that point. And on paper, it totally worked. We sold over $1 million of courses quickly. Behind the scenes, it was such a nightmare to run the logistics of it, like really, really painful. And we were doing so much manual work. My poor wife had so much like manual accounting processes going on. And we really underestimated how difficult some of that was going to be. And so you kind of get to the point once you have a little bit of an audience where the question is no longer, what can I get to work? Because when you have distribution, you can brute force a lot of different things. The question then shifts to, what kind of job do I want to give myself? And I learned that the hard way, because 1 year into running a school, I hated the job that I'd give myself. it was a terrible job. But what happened was I started recording some conversations with these early instructors. I remember the first two were with Joey Banks, who at the time was leading design systems for Webflow, and Bonnie Kate Wolf, who I think she was doing like art direction at Netflix. And I ended the recording with BK, and I was like, dang, that was pretty good. Like, I think I maybe would listen to the full thing straight through, which was not my intent. My intent was just to ask a bunch of questions, slice it all up, and use that on social media and marketing material and just create content. But then I was like, okay, what if we release those as a full episode? And then I filmed like 3 or 4 more. And then I was like, well, let's just test the waters, because I don't want to commit yet to running a podcast. I think there's something here. I'm not sure. So what I'll do is I'll just release season 1, but I'll do it as a lead magnet, meaning that you couldn't even get access to it unless you put your email in. And that way I could really see, like, is there a market for this? And I think we had like 4,000 or 5,000 people put in their email to listen to a podcast. Where I was like, all right, I think that's enough signal. Not only that, and more importantly, it was fun. Like, it was really life-giving. And that goes back again to the thing I was saying earlier, where it's like, pick things that are life-giving because they take time, and you have to keep depositing these time investments into it. And so for me, it was this right combination of, I can see the ceiling. It's really life-giving, like really life-giving. I can see myself doing this for a long time. And so when I came out with, technically we called it season 2. We ended up scrapping the seasons eventually. I had basically already made the decision that I'm going to do this for years. Like, there was no more evaluation at that point. The evaluation was done. And as soon as I released that next episode, I haven't taken a single break, probably on 120 weeks in a row, something like that. And
Wow,
I think I
that's
probably could go
impressive.
for 5-10 more years. It's like, it's easy still.
By the way, if you are new here, besides making this podcast, I also help companies grow meaningful products through Growthmates. My whole career, I've been balancing between user needs and business goals. And the biggest truth I've learned is this: what is good for the user is also good for the business. Over the last 8 years, from Miro to supporting over 25 teams, I've collected a lot of practical frameworks that actually work. And now there are 3 ways I share them. First, my POG advising program. This is where I work closely with your team to build a sustainable, user-centric growth system, not just experiments. Second, the onboarding design sprint. It's a short, focused collaboration to fix activation and redesign the first-time experience. Many teams see a real uplift very fast. And third, my course, User-Centric Product-Led Growth in the AI Era. It's a 3-week intensive where we turned a real challenge into a clear growth roadmap. People from Miro, Dropbox, Atlassian, Loom have already taken it, and for podcast listeners, there is a discount with the code Growthmates. If you want to explore any of these, everything is on Growthmates.club, and the link is in the episode description. And if someone on your team might benefit, feel free to share it. And now let's get back to the episode. It feels amazing, it gives me energy really right now, because sometimes I put a hold, like a really long hold on the podcast, but I always get back to it. It's like same thing as you said. Like, when I started that, I decided I really enjoy, I will get back to it, ideally very like consistently, but sometimes I felt a little bit too much, like because it's not just podcast, it's a course, it's speaking, events, and I felt like, I'm not that extrovert to deliver every week on that level of energy. So sometimes I needed longer breaks not to create that. But it's really inspiring what you are sharing. And with the podcast, I think it's interesting for others who are listening to us to think about how to get started today. Like, it's brilliant that you have done this lead magnet email thing, because maybe then you leverage them for the course or for other things you are doing. But for the podcast, especially YouTube, it's absolutely different. Oh my God, monster. Sometimes I literally have no idea how it works. And for people, it's even more difficult, I would say, than Twitter or LinkedIn to grow YouTube and to predict the algorithm there. So maybe there is something you learned when you got started, or you see now how people are getting started on YouTube. So it becomes more like, not predictable. We cannot predict growth. It's out of our control, but at least, you can see some traction in several months.
Yeah. The reality is it's just so much more algorithm driven, which is unpredictable, but also you have clear levers that you can pull. And the hardest part for me is honestly just how much do I want to pull them, Like, you can do things like keyword stuffing, which obviously you can take way too far where it hurts you. But the reality is, like, right now, if I release a video and I use the phrase vibe coding, it's going to do better every single time. So having an understanding of what are the trends and keywords that you want to hit is a valid strategy. I don't do that near as much as I probably should, because YouTube gives you really good tools. That's the thing about YouTube. Their analytics product is by far the best. They equip you with all kinds of things to make strategic decisions and understand what types of content is performing. So that's a piece. It's like, you can actually kind of do the research and almost work backwards from opportunities that you identify. That's less interesting to me, again, because I'm like trying to play really, really long games. So I basically only work backwards from what is personally interesting to me. That being said, there are also other levers, right? Thumbnails is such an important one. It's annoying. It's actually really annoying how important they are, because you can meaningfully impact the click-through rate based off of how you design that thumbnail. And there's like almost this cringe scale that you get to decide where you fit onto. And this answer will sound like a rant because I freaking hate it. Because like, I know that I could maybe 2x the views on almost every video just by having a really cringe thumbnail that doesn't necessarily feel cohesive to the parent brand.
Feel what you mean. I've seen that, and I'm also on you with that. Like, I maybe because we are designers in our DNA, it's like very difficult to do cringe stuff. And
It's not wrong. Like, I don't know. That's a like to each their own kind of thing. Like, the reality is, I see people that have shows that I look at and I'm like, I like my show way more than yours, but they might get more views on the same guest. And then I look at the thumbnails and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get it, man. I'd click on that thumbnail too. It doesn't feel right for me. And I think that's kind of each individual has their own appetite for cringe. And I think you have to embrace some level of cringe if you want to play any of these games. It's just, how much are you comfortable with? So that's an element. I am personally making the longer term bet. I don't really care as much about individual video views. I try not to let that weight or pull me from what I think like the top level vision and like how I want to portray Dive.club in the broader market is. But it's hard not to sometimes. It's hard not to. Like, I did one test. I'll tell you one story, which is like, I dabbled in the copy cringe just one time. And I wrote a really clickbaity title. And it was with the VP of product experience at Duolingo, Mick Reyes. Fantastic interview. It's actually so good. He's a genius. And we talked a lot about titles with UX and UI and how it's completely meaningless. But in the job market, the reality is if you write UX, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. And so I wrote some kind of thumbnail, which you can do variants of the thumbnails, right? So I always test 3 different ones. And one of them was like something like why UX is dead. Of course, it was like twice as high as any click-through rate of any thumbnail that I've ever done. And the whole video blew up as a result. And I'm like, dang it, that's so annoying. Like the one
It's
time
not
I
that
even dipped my
bad. It's not that
toes.
bad. Yeah.
For me, it was
You know,
though, right? And that's why it's like personal. It's like that was a little bit too far for me, but it worked.
yeah, you know, like these days, like on LinkedIn, you see everything is dead. And like, I literally wanted not to use that anymore in my hook message. But, you know, like maybe that timing was right as well. And I really, like, we talked a lot about like these algorithms, so like how to make it happen. And of course, the reality is that we need to care about that. We need to think about that. But to do a little bit of zoom out, you said like you prepared yourself for a long-term game with Dive.club, with podcasts, with things you are doing. What it gives you back? Like it seems like you really receive something back from it, like on an energy level, maybe.
Yeah.
Can you tell what is that thing that you receive back from it that keeps you moving on?
There's micro and there's macro. On a micro level, I'm an extrovert. I like talking to people. I like meeting people. I like making first impressions. I like hearing people's stories. Having a podcast is incredible, right? Like you can just find people that you're interested in, ask any question that you want for over an hour. Like you don't get to do that in normal life, right? Like that's not normal life. So that is very life-giving for me, and it carries me from one interview to the next. But there's a very real macro element that fits into my more, I don't know, career strategy, for lack of a better phrase. I very much so kind of think of things in 5 to 10 year timelines on it. It's just one big board game in my mind, right? And as soon as I left Maven, I saw an opportunity to build like audience distribution, but it wasn't just for the sake of it. And honestly, it wasn't even really for ads. Like that's not how again, going back to what kind of job do you want to give yourself? I don't want to give myself the job of selling ads and negotiating with brands as my primary source of income. I want to make software. That's what I love doing. So I didn't know what that was yet, but I knew that I wanted to start up again because I've only done it once and I failed, but I'm like way further along in my career now, right? So how can you contribute towards that next venture when you don't know what that venture is yet? For me, the answer was, well, I'll just build distribution that I can then allocate towards whatever startup that I make. So where I'm at right now is like, my main thing by far is InFlight. Every single day I wake up and try to build a tech startup. And, you know, we've raised money and I'm designing and building this product and I'm all in. And now it feels like after 2 years of putting in a lot of effort, I'm able to kind of cash in on some of that value that I've accrued through Dive.club, because I can just talk about InFlight and bring people along for the journey in hopefully a way that feels natural and authentic to who I am, because I like talking about stuff that I care about. And I continue to think of ways where I can kind of blur the lines between like what is Dive.club and what is InFlight, because at the end of the day, they kind of are both me, you know, like I'm putting everything into these 2 projects. And so that's the very real macro strategy that was very much so present even on day one, where I knew that I would be able to leverage this in ways that I hadn't yet thought of.
Wow, this is so forward-looking thinking. I really love that, and I want to talk to you about InFlight for sure. Yeah, so tell me more. What is that? How you ended up like on this idea eventually? By the way, before I forgot, one thing I had before we move forward, you said like there are micro and macro things you're receiving from that, but also now as a founder, like a proper founder, like, you know, sometimes I'm saying like I'm a founder, but I don't feel like I'm a proper founder because I don't have a software yet. But now as a founder, you can treat your conversations with people as learning platform. You can talk to people who are building stuff similar to your phase. And this is how I treated Growthmates. Like whenever I talk to people who are growing products, because I'm an advisor at the end and I really need some knowledge, some, you know, hidden stories behind the scenes. And I really got these stories from my guests. So getting back to you, InFlight, how did you start that? What is that? Tell me more, like what you are building. So interested, so curious.
It's funny. I've never answered the question this way, but tying it back to the podcast, the reason that I started it was actually because one of my co-founders, Kyle, who side note, had actually hired as the very first designer I'd ever hired like 12 years ago for my first startup. And then we kind of like every few years would touch base. Anyway, he randomly listened to one of the first like 25 episodes that I ever released for Dive.club. Didn't know it was me. Only afterwards figured out it was me and texted me.
How's
and
that
was like,
possible?
hey man, like, this was really good. You should say your name more because I didn't even know it was you, kind of thing. Anyway, that rekindled our friendship and we're talking about things. I'm like, wow, why'd you listen to that specific episode? And he's like, well, I'm interested in learning from design founders. I want to start my own thing. I'm like, okay, cool. What are you thinking of starting, kind of thing? And he was talking about the opportunity space of design feedback, which I care way more than I even should, just because I've been in the situation of being a designer and trying to get feedback from the team for so many years. But then also I had done a lot of, my course, I had helped out with Shift Nudge. I mean, the amount of Loom videos that I've made giving people feedback is incredible. I mean, we're talking thousands. So I had my list of all the problems that I wanted to solve, and I already kind of knew the space. But I didn't think about actually joining because I was chilling, I first off, I thought I would have to come up with the idea. It's got to be my idea. And then two, I had just had a kid. I was working part-time, kind of relaxing, and it was nice. But a thing this is a long-winded answer, but I'm going to try to make it more interesting for the creator side of things too. Because when I think about Dive.club, going back to the building leverage piece, it wasn't just about taking ad money. I was always interested in how can I use the platform to provide distribution to products that I really like in exchange for equity, because I wanted to build like a portfolio. And so I was starting to dabble my toes into, what might that look like? So for me, I heard Kyle and I'm like, I love that idea. I don't exactly know where you're going to take it yet, but like once you figure it out, let's do a deal. Like I'll invest in the company and just talk about it because it's cool and it's like perfect audience overlap with what I was doing. Well, the more that I talked with him about it, the more I sometimes joke that I flew a little bit too close to the sun, because I was like, this looks really fun. And one, it's like the space I care deeply about. Two, man, just starting something with people that you have a really good relationship with goes a long way too. And so Kyle not only was super talented, I mean, he was like designed basically all of the revenue generating features at Tinder and was at Meta, and he was building this product, Air Chat, just really skilled. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to join. And I was like, I kind of like tossed it out there a little bit and hoping he would ask me. And eventually he asked me. But at that point, InFlight was a marketplace for design feedback. So if you didn't have people on your team, you could pay, $20 to get an outside opinion from like a really skilled designer. So I built this network of really, really good designers who were all ready to give feedback. And anyway, we ended up navigating the idea maze for like 8 months and realized pretty quickly that this was actually a tool, because we built software to support that marketplace, but the software itself was awesome. And I had this moment where I was like, I would use this instead of Loom to share my work. And then we just kept iterating. What does it actually look like? What's the best possible way for a designer to share their work and share their ideas and then get feedback from the team? And we built 10 different versions of that and just kept getting a little bit better. And now I'm at the point where I use it every single day, and it's incredible. And once you then get more and more feedback, and you mentioned the podcast, it's such a big part of it, because now I have my ideas, right? Like I'm not asking questions that I think will make for good Twitter clips. I'm asking questions that I want the answers to, right? So when you're working like 0 to 1 on a new product, I'm asking people. Like I remember talking to the VP of design at Ramp. I'm like getting so aggressively specific about like, well, so how does feedback work? How are you doing this?
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. And now I'm like, okay, what if we recreate that model, but like for everybody that doesn't have access, all of this kind of stuff. We there was quite a flywheel of ideas, but eventually now we like to think about it as a way for design teams to share ideas and give feedback in a way that's just much more streamlined and organized.
This is such a beautiful overlap. When you've mentioned like you've built this first group of people who share the feedback, it seems like so logical to leverage your audience for that, right? So you uncovered this somehow, but also magical moment to find this co-founder, to find this, synergy between you. I think I'm always curious how it happens. You said like you've been in touch for a long time. Sometimes you had breaks, but I'm dreaming actually of finding a co-founder at some point, because sometimes I feel alone sometimes in that solopreneurship and really waiting for that moment, or even intentionally now building my network in a way that could lead to that. And podcast and all of this networking mechanism really work that way, that you get connected to people in this bubble with similar values. And who knows, maybe at some point I will be on your side and doing something.
It goes
like
back to something that you said earlier, that I really liked, by the way. That's why I'm just going to underline it again, which is like changing the measuring stick for why you're even putting yourself out there on the internet. Because the natural thing that we slip into is looking at impressions and comment counts and all of the metrics. Like, oh, well, that one did better than this one because it got twice as many views. Not really. The better way to think about it is, I think what you're doing is just like, hey, every time I put something out on the internet, I'm creating a magnet for like-minded people. So who are the types of people that you want to attract? And a lot of times when you work backwards from there, it leads you to a very different place in terms of the quality and type of content. And I'm now able to look back and see, oh my gosh, like all of the main people that I've collaborated with have all come from, in my case, Twitter, just because I keep putting things out there, different startups that I'm working in, investments that I've made, my co-founder. So you're very much so on the same path. I guess it's not surprising. Yeah. We've been on the same path for years now. So it's the best way. It's the best way to meet the types of people that you want to meet, is just continually putting yourself out there on the internet and creating content that you would personally be excited to click on.
And sometimes also people or society is telling us not to tell about your ideas until they are ready, not to share this loudly if you are not sure yet. And I literally challenged that concept. And like last year, I challenged this very boldly, because I think when you start sharing and articulate your dreams and your ideas, you start attracting people who have similar dreams and similar ideas. Sometimes these dreams are absolutely like so far away. So for example, one of the things I started recently sharing, that let's say if AI will replace everything and I don't know, I will not figure out how to build a product or do something else, as plan B or something else I would love to do for a living and in general is something physical, is something like not connected to digital world. And it would be an eco house or eco village where I could have like these eco homes where people could come, just enjoy some yoga sessions, some workshops, etc. Things that I do for myself every year. And I would just operate that whole thing. And I started sharing more and more of that crazy ideas of creating something like that. And a lot of people shared like, oh, and I was thinking about this and it seems like similar. And I was thinking of tea business, and tea business could collaborate with your business in the future. And it's so interesting how something you share today can appear or happen in 5 or 10 years. But for that to happen, you need to start sharing that today. And maybe, I'm curious, maybe you were thinking about the product or building the product way before when it actually happened. And looking at this today, like maybe there is something you're dreaming about to see or to do in a couple of years, if you're comfortable thinking out loud or sharing that.
Specifically with the product or with like broader like ecosystem?
Whatever you want, with your life, with your product, with anything you'd like to envision.
One thing that's kind of top of mind, and I guess it goes back to the blurring of the lines between Dive.club and InFlight, is I really enjoy the in-person element of Dive.club. And as someone who hasn't lived in a tech hub, you kind of miss that, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for network and being able to meet people like you and have all these conversations, but they all happen over the computer, right?
Yeah.
And so we just, this is not necessarily public yet, but like we just raised a round for InFlight. We got an office. I'll be out in New York City more. And so in my head, I'm like, what if we could do much more for the local design community in New York? And maybe there's a future version of Dive.club where it's actually in person, and we could get like a curated group of people, 30, 40 people into a room and just hear from, one or two and ask questions. And I could record that, release it as an episode, but then maybe there's a separate session that's like Q&A that's not recorded. And you can kind of have like more of an intimate gathering where all of that could happen in an InFlight office, but it would be for Dive.club and, what even is what at that point. I think that's really exciting and something that we've taken baby steps toward, but I fully plan on doing over the next couple years is trying to figure out what the IRL version of all of this looks like.
Well, this is so beautiful and really resonates with something that I'm missing as well. Like, spending so much time in front of your laptop, talking to amazing people, but still there. I would love to, I don't know, hug you and see you and like do in-person stuff way more than this. But reality is different. So what you said, it's beautiful. And I think it fits also your business goals. You need to build the community. You need to be user-centric, community-led growth. It will be great for the business if you do in-person physical events. This is how, like, you can even build enterprise relationships. Like, this is exactly what is working. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know, whenever you are opening that thing, I will make US visa and we'll come to New York.
Perfect.
To
that
see
would be
what's
amazing.
there.
We just opened up the office, so let us get a little bit of interior design under our belt first.
This is wonderful. And how do you feel? How do you feel like as a founder of a startup? Because how did your day change? Because I would say, like, my life, I yesterday shared this post on LinkedIn about my solopreneur, and it got viral for some reason. Like, my schedule that is very spacious, that I have time for myself, that I really need right now. I really appreciate that. Maybe at some point I will get enough of that time and I will be like, I'm ready to go, like, I don't know, many hours per day. So how your day shifted or changed, like from this maybe more chill mode to more intense mode now as a founder, or you feel that intensity, but it's good intensity, not like bad intensity?
It's been a radical shift. I mean, whatever combination of words I'm about to say probably won't do it justice, to be honest, because I was riding off of a lot of the momentum that I had created, like Dive.club was working, Figma Academy was working. I had just had a kid. And I was like, you know what? I've been so heads down sprinting for years. I'm going to coast for a little bit. And I did for like a full year. And so my shift was not from, hey, I was working 40 hours a week at this W-2 role, and now it's a little bit more intense. I'm doing a startup. No, my shift was, I'm working 20 hours a week just talking to people and writing and, tinkering in Framer on my website to the 0 to 1 pre-product market fit messiness of a new startup. And for me, step one was talking to people. Like, what are the very specific problems that we want to solve for who exactly? Because they kind of apply to everyone, And I spent basically the beginning of this year up until maybe May doing, 4 to 10 customer discovery calls a day. It would not be uncommon for me to have 8 in a row on 30-minute increments, just talking to people and then prototyping, talking to people, prototyping, and just doing that endlessly for months as we just build. We built kind of in circles, to be honest, just figuring out, like, throwing paint at the wall, Frankenstein of a product, trying to figure out what is this even? And eventually got to the point where there was kind of a shift in roles. I mentioned my co-founder Kyle being a very talented designer. So he was doing all of the design up until that point because he had been thinking about this for a year. And I was brought on more as, marketing, distribution, brand, that kind of stuff. but I like making things. And so, I tinker here and there. And we had this moment probably in the beginning of summer where it's like, we should switch, like let's try something different. Maybe you do all the design and Kyle stepped a little bit more into like business operations, that kind of thing. And that totally changed my schedule again, where all of a sudden I was an IC designer for the first time in 18 months. Oh man, it felt so good to just have whole days to just explore and prototype and think through ideas. And that's more or less where I'm at right now, where I'm doing the podcast, but basically every hour around that is just product. Like I'm just so deep in product and design, a little front end, and it's kind of great, actually.
It's great. I think it's great. It's a lot, but you raised some funds. Congrats with that. Like it's a big milestone. And maybe at this point you will have like, some people who would support you and you will grow step by step. And I think like also my assumption is that the whole thing that you were doing in your career in Dive.club and all the, I don't know, connections maybe somehow led to the point to raise the money and do it successfully, do it quite early without too many complications. I think it's also a good ROI of what you have been doing for such a long time. And I think we should definitely check back what's going on with InFlight in some time, maybe like, because this season is like more about creators, but the Growthmates and the whole brand and content I'm doing is about how companies grow, how they build what is working. And I would love to see your story on newsletter or something like that when we will see some first results. But I think it's going to be very, very soon. And I'm so happy that you found what you are doing today. And like it really gives me a lot of energy to keep doing what I'm doing while dreaming ahead about finding a partnership and doing something like tangible. Maybe on that note,
can I add one more thing, which is like, I feel like something that I see a lot that even in this conversation happens is we kind of dance around this line between, well, there's creators over here and founders over here, and they feel so different, and it would almost sense a little bit of like hesitation on your voice of like, well, I can't like call myself a founder, I'm not making software. And my hope is that there's a blurring between those two. And I think it makes a lot of sense if you zoom out and imagine, okay, well, if the cost of software starts to approach zero more and more rapidly, in theory, everybody can build. And when everybody can build, it's ideas and distribution, right? And so I think we're going to enter this world where creators are actually like one of the most valuable co-founders that you could possibly bring to the table, because the one thing that AI can't recreate is that audience-based leverage. And so it sounds like maybe that's already kind of what you're thinking, but I'm kind of hoping that that's a broader shift. Like it just feels like a departure right now, but it's not a departure. It's like building an audience is the thing that you do unto starting your own thing, especially in the future.
I think this is brilliant, especially as you have been nurturing your audience for years, like throughout your true, like authentic tone of voice versus now I see a lot of founders turn creators, but it's not authentic. It's artificial. Like,
you can sniff it
let's
out.
build LinkedIn. Let's build Twitter. Let's push this content here and there. I see this content every time. I have no idea who is that person. I see this face for the first time. I don't have any human connection to that founder, but they have a huge following, but it's not authentic following, right? So I think exactly what you have mentioned is like, it's valuable to nurture your audience, and then whatever you do with your life, I hope my audience, your audience will stay with us. Like whatever you will create in person meetings in New York, I would create, I don't know, retreats, houses, whatsoever. I hope a portion of that audience will be with you throughout these years and like what you are creating. I think this is a beautiful motivation, or like, the message for people who are listening to us today, to consider if you are thinking about building something, creating something, and it feels hard, especially building the audience. It takes a lot of time. Think about the fruits that will appear after a couple of years, and we, I think, presented several examples how it can really happen. So Reed, thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed that. Again, if people want to find you, where it's the best way to follow your journey right now?
Probably on Twitter. So rid_design, or you can go to Dive.club. That's also where I put out pretty much everything goes through my newsletter there.
Yeah, please subscribe and you will receive like beautiful emails and updates. I receive all of them, really enjoy them. Thank you, Reed. Again, like really enjoyed talking to you and took a lot of notes for myself. Even for anyone who was listening to us, please share what you think about that. It really helps me to understand what to share with you, and it helps to grow this show. Yeah. And thanks again. Enjoy your ride.
Thanks, Kate. That was a lot of fun. Appreciate you having me on.